Genesis chapter 4. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived, and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain bought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also bought of the firstlings of his flock, and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? And why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against his brother Abel, and slew him. And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. And the Lord said unto him, Therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived, and bare Enoch. And he builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehujahel, and Mehujahel begat Methusiel, and Methusiel begat Lamech. And Lamech took unto him two wives. The name of the one was Adah, and the name of the other was Zillah. And Adah bare Jabal. He was the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wives, Adah and Zillah, Hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Hearken unto my speech. For I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 20 and sevenfold. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God, said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. Now we're here to discuss Genesis chapter 4. Adam knew his wife, and she conceived, and bare Cain. And she again bare his brother Abel. Cain and Abel were twin boys. How we know this? There's a couple of other births in this chapter, but before the child is conceived, the text will say, the man knew the woman, and she conceived, and then the child was born. But in this instance, Adam only knew his wife once, and she bore two. So these were twin boys. And the default nature of duality on earth will be present again in this story of Cain and Abel. So Eve's first pregnancy was with twin sons. Cain tilled the ground, and Abel kept sheep. Verse 3, Cain brought an offering to the Lord. Abel bought the firstlings of his flock. Firstlings is defined as the first result, the firstborn, or the first of its kind. And this is significant because during biblical times, the firstborn, the first result, that was significant, and it was a huge gesture to offer that. Particularly, it was a huge gesture to offer it to God, since God created everything, and He doesn't need what you give Him. But giving Him the best of what you have is highly respectable. And as a result, the Lord had respect for Abel's offering. But unto Cain He had not respect. He didn't respect Cain. And Cain was very wroth, or highly upset, and his countenance fell. Countenance meaning expression, composure, attitude. I also went and looked up the term fell, and synonyms for fell are fierce, cruel, sinister, terrible. So, because the Lord respected Abel's offering but not Cain's, Cain developed a terrible attitude, and he was angry. And God spoke to him directly. God didn't even speak to Eve directly. He spoke to Cain directly when he saw his attitude was messed up. And he said, Cain, why are you mad? And then he goes into a rhetorical monologue. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. So what this is saying, it is not sinful in itself to not do or give your best. But living like that encourages a sinful nature. Because if you don't do your best, it's easy to become sinful. Why? Well, the scripture continues. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. What this is saying is, if you don't do your best, you will seek acceptance outside of yourself. Because you'll see the results that people who are doing their best, you'll see the results they get. And you'll want that same type of response, but you won't get it. You're going to get ignored. And you don't deserve to get that recognition because you didn't do your best. Chapter 4, verse 8. This is after knowing what the problem was. Cain killed his brother. So God told him what the problem was. And Cain, instead of asking God for a direction, for a solution, for clarification if he didn't understand, instead of asking God to give, could he accept another offering at a later time? Instead of asking God for a new job, he killed his brother because he was so jealous of him. So jealous of his brother, cruel Cain. And the motif of the good twin, bad twin, I mean, that's still evident in our society, in our American media. Still, still from the biblical days. It's biblical to have evil twin versus a good twin. Yeah. Verse 9, God asked Cain where his brother was, and Cain lied. Not 1 ounce of remorse did cruel Cain show. It isn't lost on me that the second-born child was the sweet one, and the firstborn was the evil one. God asked Cain where his brother was, and Cain says, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? Verse 10, God asked Cain, what have you done? The voice of Abel's blood cried out to God. Verse 11, following his parents' footsteps, Cain was cursed from the earth. And the curse was, when you try to grow food, there won't be a good yield. If you thought the ground was cursed before, this is the second time the land is being cursed now because of humans. If you thought it was hard before, when Adam received the curse that by the sweat of his brow he would have to work through thorns to get food, if you thought that was bad, it's going to be even worse for you. Secondly, you're going to be a fugitive and a vagabond, which means Cain would be cursed to being a wandering, transient person. He will never be able to comfortably eat well or establish stability or be comfortable. Verse 13, Cain tells the Lord his punishment is more than he can bear, and also that he's worried that being a transient vagabond will put him at risk for being murdered. So this man murders his brother after he doesn't put his best effort to impress God, murders his brother out of jealousy, but not before God tells him what the problem was and gives him a chance to repent, find a different solution. He's so low vibrational, he just kills his brother and then says, okay, I understand that I'm punished, but I'm worried that I'm going to die. Wow. Cruel. Cold-hearted. God told Cain that whoever murdered him will be punished sevenfold or 7 times worse. Then Cain was being punished right now. And then God marked him. And marked means a sign or an indication. He was marked to let others know not to kill him. I'm just so self-conscious. I feel like something, I've always been like that, just paying attention. Okay, verse 16, Cain went out from the presence of God to the east of Eden in the land of Nod. Then it says here, again about knowing. Cain knew his wife, and his wife was unnamed, because when you marry a cursed man, you don't get remembered. Cain knew his wife, and she bare Enoch. And Cain built the city after the name of his son. He built a city named Enoch. Then we have what's called an epic catalog. Epic catalogs were present in ancient texts because during biblical times and just other ancient civilizations, knowing the lineage of the character added valuable information. And so we have here Cain begat Enoch, who begat Irad, who begat Mehujael, who begat Methusael, who begat Lamech. And the story stops at Lamech, because Lamech is the first man to have 2 wives. And even here, that That element of duality. He had two wives, one named Ada, Adah, and one wife named Zillah, Zillah. Ada had two sons with Lamech, Jabal and Jubal. Jabal fathered those who dwell in tents and have cattle. Jubal fathered musicians who played the harp and the organ. Zillah had one son with Lamech, and his name was Tubal-Cain, and he was the artificer, or a person who worked with brass and iron. And this, verse 23, Lamech told his wives, gathered his wives together and said, "Hey, I murdered a man to my wounding and a young man to my hurt." So he killed a man in self-defense and told his wives about it, and then told them additionally, if Cain's death is sevenfold, then Lamech, he spoke in third person. He said, if Cain's death is sevenfold, then Lamech's death will be avenged 70 and sevenfold. So this is a weird flex, because you're the descendant of a cursed man who murdered his own brother out of jealousy. So you're the descendant of a cursed man who was a murderer, and you're flexing that you're a murderer. Can't nobody kill me. If Cain be avenged 7, then I'll be avenged 70 and 7. That's what he was saying. And he called his wives in there to say it. What I also think this is illustrating is men with this type of uh, arrogant, braggadocious spirit. They tend to attract women because he had two of them. Verse 25, Adam knew or experienced his wife again, and Eve bore Seth. Seth in Hebrew means appointed or placed. So Eve named him Seth as another seed to help heal their family from Abel's loss. Seth fathered Enos, and then began men to call on the Lord. So that was quite the roller coaster ride for one chapter. There are a few things that I'd like to add to this, but I'm trying to figure out a new way to organize, because I feel like I get so much information, but I'd like to be a little bit more concise, so I'll stop rambling and just get on with it. The default nature of the earthly creation is duality. Anything created on this earth will have good and bad. And there's opposing ideas with every creation as well. Cain tilled the land, while Abel kept the sheep. God cursed the ground in chapter 3 as part of Adam's punishment, and by the sweat of his brow he will eat. The ground also grows thorns. Cain's work environment is cursed. His work hinges on producing a yield from a cursed land. Cain was born into a difficult career and had to do difficult things that Abel wasn't required to do because of his father. Tilling the land is hard, sweaty work with uncertain results, because that's part of the curse of his father. Cain maintains plant life. Plants are rooted to one spot. They don't respond. They don't eat the same way that other creatures eat. Cain's job is mechanical. Spending a day around plant life is similar to spending a day around inanimate objects. Abel did not work in a cursed environment. Animals hadn't been cursed. Abel kept flock and lambs. Animals move, they interact, they have their own personalities and their own idiosyncrasies. So Animals would be something like one animal might be a skittish animal where you have to approach them slowly. You might have another animal who's mischievous and who's always getting into stuff. Abel's job does not require him to produce anything the same way Cain's did. His job didn't hinge on production. So his job required him and allowed him to develop the skills to be emotionally available, responsive, observant. Animal work is different than plant work, even though neither job is with working with other people. Working with animals are different. You Animals can give tangible, clear results when you interact with them. He understands giving his best with animals produces better results. Cain's job hinges on his ability to produce from a cursed land. And because of his job, he may or may not produce anything. So if he does get something, it's good that he got something because this land is cursed. Even with all of his efforts, he may not receive much because his environment, his work environment, is a cursed land. And that's something Abel didn't have to deal with. So Abel could have a gentle nature. He could have the capacity to think about giving his best. But with Cain, he could only think about producing. With this attitude of giving an offering instead of giving the best, Cain experienced jealousy. Cain got an attitude. Why? Because Abel already has an easier job. He already has it easy. And then he gets God's favor too? He was incensed. God asked Cain why was he mad? And then he went into the rhetorical monologue and he said, if you do well, you'll get the favor you want. But when you don't do well, sin lieth at the door. Why? Because it creates an environment for you to behave in a sinful manner. It creates it. You become low vibrational when you don't seek a better version of yourself. When you don't seek doing the best you can. When you don't seek doing the best you can, then you seek doing what you can, what else you can. And you become low vibrational. And your thoughts are low vibrational. That's why Cain didn't ask God, hey, can I get a different solution? Because I would like to receive your favor as well. Instead of him wanting to receive favor from God, he wanted to harm his innocent brother who would take the time to do what God wanted to get his favor, to get the favor from God. He'd take the time. Cain didn't have the capacity because he was low vibrational. All he thought about was the jealousy that he had of his brother, who already had an easier job, he didn't have to do what you did. He didn't have to work in a cursed environment. How come God didn't pay attention to that? You will want the same results. When you don't do your best, and you see someone else doing their best, and they're getting results from doing their best, most of the time you will feel some kind of way. So it's not a sin to not do your best. It's just you're going to feel some kind of way when when you want that, you're not going to get it. That's what it meant when it says, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. That's the same punishment Eve had. Eve will desire her husband. She will desire a man, and he'll rule over her. He will not be accommodating to her desire. But in this case, he's getting punishment like his mother because he didn't do what it took to be the best. And instead of figuring out how to be the best, he murders his innocent brother, who was taking the time to be his best. Reading this came at a time where I was thinking, I did a video about something else. But when you don't do your best, the moral of the story, you don't do your best, you're likely to attack the person who's getting the results of doing their best. You're likely to attack them, you're likely to speak against them, and to hyper focus on people who are getting the best results instead of figuring out how to do it yourself. God spoke directly to Cain. All Cain had to do was talk back to God, ask him for a solution, ask him for help. But when you are determined to not do your best, when you are determined to seek the negative, well, I already work in a cursed environment, and it's hard, I got to work by the sweat of my brow. Abel doesn't have to work by the sweat of his brow. Your focus doesn't get any higher. You just seek out the lowest vibrational. And he was low vibrational the entire story, because even after God cursed him, he didn't even say, Lord, I'm sorry about my brother. He didn't even seem sad. He just said, okay, well, I don't want to die too. I don't want anybody to murder me. Hopefully we'll see you in chapter 5.